Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. You are standing in the dark. It is 4:30 in the morning, and the city of London is making its first sounds of the day. Somewhere in the street outside, a cartwheel grinds against cobblestone. A dog, a shout from the river. The smell coming through the gap under the door is mud and smoke and the river at low tide. And you have lived with that smell for 8 months now without getting used to it. You pull your coat tighter and reach for the tinderbox. The fire needs to be going before the first customer arrives. The first customer always arrives before 6. There is a room behind you, long and low, with 8 wooden tables and 2 benches to each table. There are clay pipes lined up on a shelf near the door. There is a printed sheet pinned to the wall beside the bar listing the prices of things. And at the center of the room, sitting on its iron hook above the largest hearth, is the vat, empty now, cold. Before this day is over, you will fill that vat 4 times. You do not know yet what this particular day will bring. You do not know that somewhere across the gray water of the North Sea, a fleet of 463 ships is making its final preparations. You do not know that the men who will sit at these tables this morning are some of the most frightened, calculating, and dangerous men in England. You do not know that what happens in this room, at these tables, over cups of this bitter, dark drink, will help determine who rules this country. You know where the coal is kept. You know how to get the fire going. You know which table legs are uneven and which cups have chips along the rim. You know that Mr. Lloyd does not like the benches pushed back too far from the tables, and that the papers must be laid flat, not folded, and that when a man is speaking quietly to another man and stops when you approach, you put the cup down and you walk away without looking at their faces. You are 14 years old. You have been working at Lloyd's Coffeehouse for 8 months. And in the next 50 days, you are going to watch a king lose his throne. You are not going to understand everything you see. You are going to remember all of it. There is a particular customer who comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He has a Dutch accent so thick you can barely follow it. He speaks English well enough, but something in the shape of his vowels is wrong in a way you cannot place. He sits always at the corner table, the one farthest from the door, and he orders 1 cup and drinks it slowly and reads without looking up for an hour. Last Thursday he was not reading. He was leaning forward over the table, his voice completely gone, his lips barely moving, and the man across from him had his eyes on the door the entire time. You put the cup down. You walked away. You have been thinking about that table ever since. There is something happening in England. You felt it when you arrived from Surrey 8 months ago, the way you feel weather coming before you can see the clouds. In the streets there is a quality of listening, as though the city itself has its head tilted slightly to one side. Men who used to argue loudly at these tables now argue quietly. Men who used to argue quietly now sit in silence. Men who used to sit in silence have stopped coming entirely. 3 weeks ago, a man left a pamphlet on the table by the door. You picked it up to move it. The title was in large black type, and you stood there for a moment in the middle of the room with it in your hands and read the first line before you understood that you should put it back down. You put it back down. Mr. Lloyd came out from behind the bar and folded it and put it in his coat pocket and said nothing. You are going to carry cups of coffee from the vat to the tables and back again, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, through one of the most consequential months in the history of England. You are going to hear things that will not appear in any official account. You are going to watch men make decisions at wooden tables over bitter drinks while you stand close enough to touch them. You are going to learn that a revolution does not sound like what you expect it to sound like. It does not roar. It murmurs. This is Quiet History at Bedtime. If this is your kind of story, a subscribe means everything right now. Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. Just relax and feel free to let this play as you drift off to sleep. Now, let us begin. You are Thomas. You are 14 years old, born in a village in Surrey called Cheam, the second son of a tanner. Your father's hands are the color of old saddle leather. Your mother bakes bread twice a week and keeps 3 chickens. You have a younger sister named Anne and an older brother named Will, who will inherit the tannery and the smell that goes with it. You will not inherit anything. This is not a complaint. It is simply what is true. 8 months ago, a man from London came through Cheam on his way south, and he stopped at the inn where your mother sometimes sold eggs, and over the course of an hour your mother arranged for you to go back with him. He was an acquaintance of Edward Lloyd, the proprietor of a coffeehouse on Tower Street in the City of London. They needed a boy. You were a boy. You were 14, old enough to carry things and young enough to cost very little. Your wage is 4 shillings a month. You sleep in a room behind the kitchen, on a pallet, with a wool blanket. There is a small window that faces the alley. In summer you can hear the cats. In October, which is where you are now, you can hear the wind off the river, and it comes under the door and across the floor, and you have learned to sleep with your knees pulled up. This is your life. It is not a large life, but it is, at this particular moment in history, positioned at the exact center of something enormous. Lloyd's Coffeehouse opened in 1686, 2 years before your arrival, on Tower Street, a few minutes' walk from the river. Edward Lloyd is a careful man in his late 30s, with close-cropped hair and the habit of listening to conversations for slightly longer than people expect before responding. He opened this establishment because he understood something that not everyone understood at the time, that merchants, sea captains, ship owners, and the men who insure their cargo all need to be in the same room at the same time, and if you give them a place to sit and a warm drink, they will come every day without being asked. They come every day without being asked. The drink is coffee. You have made this drink so many times now that the process is in your hands without needing to go through your head. Green coffee beans come in sacks from the Dutch and Turkish merchants who trade through the port. You roast them yourself in a long-handled pan over the fire, shaking it constantly until the color deepens to the brown of dark earth and the smell fills the room. Then you grind them in the heavy iron mill bolted to the workbench, turning the handle with both hands while the grinds fall into the drawer below. Then you tip the grounds into the vat of water already heating over the fire, and you wait. The coffee brews for approximately 20 minutes. It is served without milk. Milk was never part of this. It is served with sugar, a small clay pot of it on each table, because the drink itself is bitter in a way that sits at the back of your throat long after you have swallowed. The first time you tasted it, 8 months ago, you thought something had gone wrong. You have tasted it every day since, and it still makes your eyes tighten slightly at the first sip. The customers love it. For 1 penny, any man who walks through that door can sit at any table in this room for as long as he likes. He pays his penny to Mr. Lloyd at the door. He takes a seat, and he is brought a cup of coffee and the use of whatever papers and news sheets are available that day. He can stay for 3 hours. He can stay for 6. Men come here in the morning and do not leave until the afternoon, and they are not considered odd for it. This is what a coffee house is. It is not a tavern, though it has the same density of voices and the smell of pipe smoke that gets into your clothes and stays there. It is not a church, though men sometimes speak with the intensity of prayer. It is something new, something that has no name yet except Coffeehouse. And in the year 1688, there are somewhere between 300 and 400 of them in London alone. Each one is a room where information flows. Each one is a room where a certain kind of man can sit across from a certain other kind of man and say things that cannot be said elsewhere. And this particular room on this particular street, in this particular autumn, is one of the rooms where England is changing. You do not fully understand this yet. You begin to understand it around mid-morning when the tables fill. The regular customers at Lloyd's are not politicians or courtiers. They are men of the port, ship owners who want to know which voyages are worth the risk, sea captains who have just returned from the Baltic or the Levant and need to sell what they know about the water. Men who underwrite marine insurance, which means they will pay out if a ship sinks, and therefore need to know everything about ships. These men have been coming to this room since Lloyd's opened 2 years ago, and they have brought with them a habit of calculation that sits behind every sentence they speak. Everything here is risk. Everything here is information about risk. By late October 1688, the information coming into this room is changing the faces of the men who receive it. You notice it first in the mornings, in the quiet before the room fills. When you come out from the kitchen with the first tray of cups, there are already men at the door, waiting. This is not unusual, but in the last 2 weeks, the waiting has been different. Men who used to lean against the doorframe and exchange pleasantries now stand slightly apart from each other, looking at the street. They come inside quickly, as though the outside has become uncomfortable. You refill the vat and say nothing. You have learned in 8 months that silence is part of this job. The penny newspapers have been saying things for weeks in the careful, measured language that newspapers use when they are trying to say something without quite saying it. The London Gazette, which is the official government paper, says very little. But there are other sheets, newsletters written by hand and copied out and passed from table to table, and these say more. You cannot always read them. When you can, you do not always understand what you are reading. But you understand the word fleet, you understand the word Dutch, and you have heard, more than once in the last several days, a number that stays with you because it is too large to put down. 463. 463 ships. You do not know exactly what is coming, but you know that number. And you know that this morning, when you put the first cups down and stepped back toward the wall, the two men at the far corner table stopped speaking at exactly the moment your foot crossed an invisible line in the room, and did not start again until you were behind the bar. You know what that pause means. You have heard it before in the last few weeks. You hear it now. You pick up the empty tray. You go back to the vat. You fill the next cup. The room is filling up around you, the sound of it rising from the low rumble of two voices to the layered hum of 20. And somewhere in that hum are the pieces of something enormous that no one is saying out loud. Not yet. But the month is not over, and you will be here every morning when it starts. The coal bin is behind the kitchen door. You know exactly how heavy a full bucket is, and exactly how heavy it is when you need to refill it. You refill it twice before noon. The fire must be kept at the right height, or the coffee in the vat goes bitter in a different way. The way burned things are bitter, and Mr. Lloyd will not say anything to you directly, but will press his lips together in a manner that you have learned to read as disappointment. You do not want to see that expression. You keep the fire right. The pipes on the shelf near the door are long-stemmed, white clay, and men take them and fill them from the tobacco pouch they carry and smoke them at the table while they read or talk. When a man leaves, you collect the pipe and wash it in the basin and dry it and return it to the shelf. Some men bring their own pipes. Some men forget them. Once, 3 weeks ago, a man left a pipe and also a small folded paper tucked beneath it, and you carried the pipe to the basin without touching the paper, and when you came back the paper was gone, taken by someone you had not seen. You spent the rest of that afternoon wondering which man in the room it had been. You still do not know. Most of what happens here you will never fully understand. You will see the surface of things, the cups, the coal, the folded papers, the pauses in conversations. You will carry the evidence of important decisions from one side of a room to the other without knowing what those decisions were. You are part of the machinery without knowing what the machine is for. But you are close. You are closer to it than almost anyone. And in the weeks to come, you will be close enough that the heat of it reaches you even through the walls of what you do not know. For now, the morning moves forward. The cups go out and come back. The vat is refilled. The fire is kept right. By the time the room is full, in the middle of the morning, the sound has layered into something you can almost read like a page. You have been here long enough to know the difference between a room that is loud because men are happy, and a room that is loud because men are afraid and filling the air with words to cover the fear. This morning the room is loud in the second way. Near the window, two men you do not know by name are speaking over a new sheet spread flat between their cups. One of them keeps tapping a point on the page with one finger. He taps it 4 times while you watch from across the room. The other man shakes his head, not in disagreement, but in the way you shake your head when something is too large to argue against. You carry a cup to the table behind them. You hear 3 words. You do not repeat them. At the table by the south wall, the one with the uneven leg that you have shimmed with a folded piece of leather, sits a man named Whitmore, who you know because he comes every Monday and Wednesday and always wants his coffee brought immediately when he sits down, before his coat is even off. He is in shipping insurance. His hands are always slightly ink-stained. This morning he has not touched his cup. It is sitting in front of him, and the steam has already stopped rising from it, and he is looking at the wall. You pick up the cold cup. You bring him a fresh one. He does not acknowledge this. But when you set it down, he puts both hands around it, and for a moment he holds it the way a cold man holds something warm, which is different from the way a man holds a cup of coffee. You note this. You carry your tray back. At midday, Mr. Lloyd comes out from behind the bar and checks the vat and the coal and the papers and makes no comment, which means everything is satisfactory. He is a man who speaks when something is wrong and does not speak when things are right. And so his silence is a form of approval that you have learned to receive without needing it confirmed aloud. He pauses at the corner table. The Dutchman is not there today. He will be there Thursday. For now, the corner table holds two men you do not recognize, speaking in the low, precise way of men doing arithmetic. And Mr. Lloyd looks at them for a moment, and then looks away and goes back behind the bar, and the afternoon begins to fold into early evening. You refill the vat once more. You sweep the floor between the benches while the last customers finish their conversations. You put the clay pipes back on the shelf. The fire in the hearth burns down to a glow that you bank carefully with ash so the embers last through the night. One by one, the men leave, buttoning their coats against the October cold, going out into Tower Street and the dark. The last one out closes the door. The room is quiet. You are standing in it with your broom, and the only sound is the faint settling of the fire and the distant sound of the river, and you stand there for a moment in the particular silence that a room full of sound leaves behind it when it empties. You think about the man with his hands around the cold cup. You think about the number 463. Mr. Lloyd comes out from behind the bar with a candle. He looks at you for a moment with the expression he uses when he is going to say something he would not say in front of customers. He says, "There are things spoken in this room that are spoken here and nowhere else." You say, "Yes, sir." He says, "I mean nowhere." You say, "Yes, sir." He blows out the candle in the wall sconce nearest the door. He says, "Early tomorrow." He goes to the back. You stand in the dimness for a moment longer. You think about what early means when tomorrow might be the day the world shifts. Then you go to your room behind the kitchen, and you lie down on your pallet, and the wind from the river comes under the door and crosses the floor. You pull the blanket up. You listen to London at night, the sounds it makes when no one is paying attention. After a while, you sleep. November begins with fog. You know this because when you open the back door at 4:15 to bring in the morning coal, the alley outside has disappeared. There is a wall of gray starting 3 feet from the doorstep. The sound of the river is louder than usual in fog, the way sounds come closer when there is nothing for them to bounce off of. And you can hear the water moving even from here, even through the stone and the mud and the packed streets between Tower Street and the Thames. You carry the coal bucket inside. You set it beside the hearth. You begin the fire. This is the 1st of November, 1688. In 4 days, the most powerful fleet assembled in recent memory will land on the southwest coast of England. You do not know this yet. You know the fire needs to be going before 6, and that the coal is nearly through, and that you will need to arrange a delivery before the week is out. You strike the flint against the steel and catch the spark in the char cloth and blow it carefully into a flame. The room comes up around you as the fire takes hold. 8 tables, 16 benches, the shelf of clay pipes, the pinned sheet of prices, the bar where Mr. Lloyd stands and watches the room with the same expression whether the room is full or empty. This room is not famous yet. It will be. Within 5 years of this morning, Edward Lloyd will relocate these premises to Lombard Street, a better address, closer to the money. Within 10 years, the name Lloyd's will mean something specific to every merchant in England, a place where the risk of the sea can be transferred, for a price, from one man's shoulders to another's. Within 100 years, Lloyd's of London will be the largest insurance market in the world. None of that has happened yet. For now, it is a coffee house on Tower Street, open 6 days a week, with a boy tending the fire at 4 in the morning, while the fog sits on the city. You are that boy. The coffee beans are in a sack under the bar. You take out what you need for the morning, roughly 2 handfuls for the first vat, and carry them to the roasting pan. This pan is long-handled, iron, blackened from use, and you hold it over the fire and shake it in the steady rhythm you have learned. The beans shift and tick against the iron. The color deepens. The smell is the first thing the customers notice when they come in. You know this because more than once a man coming through the door has stopped with his coat half off and said something about the smell before he said anything else. The smell is dark and warm and slightly burned, and it is unlike anything else in the city. In a city that smells of horse dung and coal smoke, and the river at low tide, it cuts through everything. You take the beans off the fire when the color is right. You grind them in the iron mill. You tip the grounds into the vat and add the water. You wait. While you wait, you set the tables. Each table gets a small clay pot of sugar because the coffee is too bitter without it. Each table gets a newspaper or news sheet if there is one available. This morning there are 3 copies of the London Gazette from the previous week, folded and slightly worn from many hands, and 2 handwritten newsletters that came in yesterday afternoon from a man who delivers them twice a week. You lay the Gazette copies flat on 3 tables. The newsletters go on the 2 tables nearest the bar, the ones where the regular customers tend to sit. You have read them. This is the thing you do not do, and have been doing for several weeks. Mr. Lloyd cannot read everything he receives, not in the time before customers arrive, and you have discovered that you can read faster than he expects, and that the newsletters sit on the bar for several minutes each morning before he takes them to the tables, and that several minutes is enough. What the newsletters say this week in the careful sideways language of men who know they may be read by the wrong person. There is a fleet. There are more ships than England has seen assembled since the Armada came 100 years ago. There is a prince in the Netherlands, a Protestant prince, who has been invited by powerful men in England to cross the water and take the crown from the Catholic king who currently sits on it. The invitation was written and signed and delivered in late June. You read that on the third page of a newsletter 3 weeks ago, sitting in this room at 4:30 in the morning before the customers arrived. And you put the newsletter down and sat very still for a moment, because even at 14 you understand what that means. 7 men. 7 of the most powerful men in England put their names on a document inviting a foreign prince to invade their own country. You do not know their names yet. You will hear them spoken at these tables in the weeks to come. The fire under the vat is steady. You check it, add a piece of coal, check it again. The coffee is almost ready. By 6 o'clock, the fog is beginning to lift, and the first customers are at the door. The first man in is someone you know only as the captain, though you do not know which ship or whether he still commands one. He is somewhere past 50, with the particular walk of a man who has spent years on a deck, a slight forward lean, as though anticipating the roll of a floor that does not roll. He comes in on Mondays and Thursdays and occasionally on other days when something brings him to this part of the city. This is Tuesday. He comes in and takes off his coat and hangs it on the hook near the door and sits at the table second from the left. He does not look at the newsletter on the table nearest the bar. He looks at the door. You bring him a cup. He wraps his hands around it the same way Whitmore did yesterday, the way cold men hold warm things. You go back to the bar. Within 20 minutes, the room has 8 men in it. By 9 o'clock, there are 19. By 10, the benches are full, and 2 men are standing near the window with their cups, which never happens except on the days when something has driven everyone indoors at the same time. The sound in the room is wrong. You cannot say exactly how it is wrong. The volume is ordinary. The smoke is ordinary. The cups going back and forth are ordinary. But underneath all of it there is a frequency, like a string on a fiddle pulled too tight, and you hear it not in your ears but somewhere behind your breastbone. You carry cups and say nothing. Near 11, a man comes in whom you have not seen before. He is perhaps 35, well dressed in a coat that cost more than everything you own by a considerable margin, and he looks around the room with the specific expression of a man who has been in better rooms and is tolerating this one. He sits at the corner table where the Dutchman sits on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and he puts a leather satchel on the bench beside him and does not take out anything from it. He orders coffee. You bring it. He puts his hands flat on the table, both of them palms down, and looks at the door. For the next hour, 4 different men come in and sit at that table, stay between 10 and 20 minutes, and leave. None of them is there when the next one arrives. Between each of them, the man with the satchel drinks his coffee and looks at the door. You do not watch him directly. You watch the room in the way you have learned to watch the room, from the edges, from the corner of your vision, while your hands are doing the thing your hands are supposed to be doing. You have become very good at this. The newsletters are being passed from table to table in the way that newsletters always travel in this room. One man reads, another leans over to look, the paper moves. But today there is less reading and more holding. Men pick up the newsletter and hold it and look at it without their eyes moving, which means they are not reading it. They are thinking. They are thinking with a piece of paper in their hands, so that their hands have something to do. You collect the empty cups and bring them to the basin behind the bar. You wash them in the cold water. You dry them on the cloth. You go back out. The vat needs refilling at midday, and you do this by carrying water from the pump in the back courtyard in a bucket, 3 trips, your arms aching by the second, and your back complaining by the third. You are not a large boy. This job requires a certain amount of strength that you have been building since you arrived, and you are stronger than you were in March, but not as strong as you will be by spring. This does not matter. You do the work. While the vat comes back up to heat, you sweep the floor between the tables, working around the boots of men who do not move their feet and do not look at you and do not acknowledge that the floor is being swept beneath them. This is the usual arrangement, and it suits you. Invisibility is the working condition of this job, and you have found over 8 months that invisibility has a particular advantage. Nobody stops talking when you are the one who is near them. Not always. Sometimes they do. The pauses you have learned to recognize. But when a man is in the middle of a thought, a real thought, the kind that has been building for days and finally needs to come out of his mouth, the presence of a boy with a broom does not necessarily interrupt it. This is how you learn things. At 12:30, 2 men at the table by the south wall are speaking in voices just above a whisper, which in the noise of the room amounts to something like privacy. You are sweeping the floor 3 feet away. One of them says something about the 5th. The other one says 4 days. The first one says something you do not fully catch, a word that sounds like torbe, which you do not know. The second one says, if the wind holds. Then one of them looks at you. You sweep another stroke. You move away. You file what you heard next to the number 463, in the part of your mind where you keep things that might one day make a pattern. The 5th. 4 days. Torbe. If the wind holds. The afternoon moves the way afternoons move in this room, in layers of conversation and coffee and the slow thickening of pipe smoke toward the ceiling. By 3 o'clock, the light from the windows is low and amber, and the candles on the tables are lit, 12 of them in their holders, and the room has the look of something from a painting you saw once in a church in Cheam, all shadowed faces and golden light. The man with the satchel left after midday. He did not take the satchel with him. You found it when you cleared the table, sitting on the bench, a plain leather bag with a buckle, slightly worn at the corners. You looked at it for a moment. You picked it up. You carried it to Mr. Lloyd behind the bar. He took it from you without a word. He put it under the bar. He did not look inside it, not while you were watching. You went back to your work. The afternoon customers are a different crowd from the morning. Fewer ship owners, more lawyers and clerks from the nearby offices, a physician who comes every Tuesday and reads the newsletters from front to back, with the concentrated expression of a man trying to understand a diagnosis. He has been coming here for 2 years, and he always orders a second cup, and he always pays with exact coin, which you know because exact coin means no counting. Today he reads the newsletter twice. He does not order a second cup. He pays with exact coin and leaves at 3:30, which is an hour earlier than usual. You note this. By 5 o'clock, the room is thinning. The light is nearly gone from the windows. The candles have been burning for 2 hours, and some of them are beginning to gutter, and you replace them from the box beneath the bar. Tallow candles, not wax, which cost less and smell of rendered fat when they burn. That smell mixes with the coffee and the tobacco into the specific scent that lives in your hair and your coat, and that you have stopped noticing except in the evenings when you walk past the open door after it is closed, and the smell comes out and reminds you. This is the smell of where you work. This is the smell of a room where things are happening. By 6, the last customers have left and the door is bolted, and you sweep the floor again, the full sweep this time, working from the back of the room to the front, collecting the ash and tobacco and the dirt from boots that have walked through the streets of London and brought London in with them. You bank the fire. You put the cups in the basin. You blow out 10 of the 12 candles. Mr. Lloyd is behind the bar with a ledger, doing the accounts in the light of the remaining 2 candles, and the scratch of his pen is the only sound in the room. After a while, he says, without looking up, "Tomorrow there will be more of them." You do not ask more of who. You know that he means more customers. He says, "Be here at 4." You are usually here at 4:30. The difference matters to him for reasons you do not ask about. You say, "Yes, sir." He does not look up. The pen keeps moving. You take a candle and go to your room behind the kitchen and set it on the shelf beside your pallet and sit for a moment on the edge of the blanket. The city outside is making its night sounds, the watch calling the hour somewhere to the north, a cart, the river. You think about the satchel under the bar. You think about the word Torbe. You think about 4 days. You think about the man who wrapped both hands around his cup like a man holding on to something. Then you lie back. The candle burns. The city moves around you in the dark, going about whatever business the night requires, carrying its secrets from one address to another through streets you do not know and will not walk down. You are tired. Your arms ache from the water bucket. Your back aches from the broom. Outside, somewhere past the river, the wind is blowing over the North Sea in a direction that will matter to you by the end of the week, though you do not know this yet. You are 14 years old, lying on a pallet in a room behind a kitchen in the city of London. Tomorrow you will be here at 4. The fire will need starting. The vat will need filling. And 4 days from tonight, something will happen on a beach in the southwest of England that will change the country you are living in so completely that the men who come through that door in the weeks after will walk differently, speak differently, look at each other across their cups with expressions that are not the same expressions they wore before. You will see all of it. From the edge of the room, with a tray in your hands. 4 shillings a month is not nothing. Your brother Will earns more at the tannery, but Will has the smell in his hands and his clothes, and will have it for the rest of his life. You have coffee in your coat. You have, lately, something else. The particular education of a boy who has spent 8 months carrying cups through a room where important men speak in low voices. You know things now that you did not know in March. You know that a man who stops talking when you approach is a man with something to protect. You know that a man who keeps talking when you approach either does not notice you, which means he is careless, or has decided you do not matter, which means he has made a calculation about you that you can use. You know that a fleet of 463 ships is the largest assembled force on the water since 1588, when the Spanish Armada came up the Channel and was broken apart by English ships and English weather and Protestant wind. England beat the Armada. You are not certain, lying here on your pallet in the dark, what England will do with this fleet. You are not certain anyone is certain. But you know that tomorrow the room will be full earlier than usual, and the day after, and the day after that, and that on some morning in the next several days, someone will come through the door with news that will change the expression on every face in the room at once. You have been waiting for that morning. You do not know if you are afraid of it or looking forward to it. Both, perhaps. You are 14. The candle has gone out. The room is dark, and the city is dark, and somewhere a dog is barking at something only dogs can hear. You breathe. The blanket is warm. And somewhere out on the gray water, a fleet is moving west. You wake before the candle. This has never happened before. Every other morning for 8 months, the candle has been burning when you opened your eyes, left overnight by Mr. Lloyd or by habit, a small yellow point in the dark. But this morning, when you wake, the room is completely black, the candle long dead. And you lie still for a moment, trying to understand what woke you. It is not a sound. It is the absence of wind. For 3 days, the wind off the river has been steady from the southwest, the kind of wind that rattles the window frame in its fitting and pushes the smoke back down the chimney so that the kitchen smells of char. You have been sleeping with that sound for days. Now it has stopped, and the silence of it woke you the way a sound would. You lie there in the dark. You think about what a man said 2 days ago, at the table by the south wall, his voice low and aimed at the floor. If the wind holds. The wind has not held. The wind has shifted. You do not know yet what this means for a fleet at sea. You get up. You dress in the dark. You go out to the kitchen and build the fire, and while you crouch over the tinderbox, striking sparks into the char cloth, you become aware of a sound that is not the usual sound of 4:15 in the morning on Tower Street. It is faint, coming from the street. And it is the sound of feet, more than one person, moving with purpose. At 4 in the morning, you get the fire going. You put the coffee beans in the pan and begin to roast them, and after a few minutes you hear the knock at the front door. 3 knocks, firm and spaced. Mr. Lloyd is already up. You hear him moving through the front room before you hear yourself thinking that this is unusual. The bolt draws back, a voice too low to understand. Mr. Lloyd's voice, lower still. The door closes but does not bolt. You roast the beans. You keep your hands moving. By the time you carry the first tray out to the front room at 5:30, which is half an hour before the usual opening time, Mr. Lloyd is already behind the bar with a candle lit and a news sheet spread flat in front of him, reading. He does not look up. You set the tray down on the bar and he says, without moving his eyes from the page, "Open the door." You open the door. There are 7 men standing on Tower Street in the dark and the cold. breath coming in clouds, coats pulled close. They come in without the usual exchange of morning pleasantries, without the loosening of scarves and the stamping of boots and the complaint about weather that usually accompanies the first entry of the day. They come in and sit down and look at you. You go to the vat. You fill the cups. You bring them out. By 6 o'clock, there are 23 men in the room. This has never happened before. The room holds perhaps 35 in comfort and 40 at a push, and on an ordinary day it reaches its fullest around 10 in the morning and stays there through noon. At 6 on a cold November morning, in 1688, there are 23 men at the tables, and 2 more have just come through the door, and the sound of the room is already at the level it usually reaches by mid-morning. You carry cups. You go back and forth from the vat to the tables, and from the tables to the basin and back again. You listen. The word you hear most often in the first hour of the morning is not a word you know. It is torbe, the same word you caught 4 days ago at the table by the south wall, and now you hear it from 6 different directions in the span of 20 minutes, spoken in 6 different ways. Once as a question, once as a flat statement, once in a tone you cannot read, something between relief and fear, and you would call it awe, except that you have only heard that word in church, and the men saying torbe this morning do not sound religious. They sound as though something they were told would happen has happened, and now they are standing inside the fact of it. You put a cup down at the table nearest the window. The man there has a news sheet in his hands that is not the London Gazette, and is not the newsletter that Mr. Lloyd receives from his usual source. It is something else, newer, the ink still slightly different in its blackness, the paper still with the faint smell of the press on it. He is reading it to the man beside him. You hear landed at Torbe on the 5th. You hear 21,000 men. You hear the number 5 November, and something moves in your chest, some recognition that you cannot name, because the 5th of November in England is not an ordinary date. Every child in England knows the 5th of November. Every child in England has been told about the gunpowder plot of 1605, the Catholic conspiracy to blow up the Protestant Parliament, the barrels of gunpowder found beneath the House of Lords, the man named Guy Fawkes taken in the dark. Every November the 5th, across every village and city in England, there are bonfires. The prince from the Netherlands landed on the 5th of November, on Protestant England's most Protestant day. This was not an accident. You think about this while you carry the tray back to the bar. You think about how a man planning to take a throne chooses his arrival date the way a man delivering a sermon chooses his text. The meaning is not separate from the act. The meaning is the act. You refill the cups. The room is still filling. By 8 o'clock, there are 31 men in the room, and several are standing, and the tobacco smoke is already thick near the ceiling, and the fire is burning high, and the vat is going through coffee faster than you have ever seen it go through coffee. You have refilled it twice already. Your arms ache. Your back aches. You have not had time to eat anything this morning. You carry cups. At the corner table, the one that the Dutchman uses on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there are 4 men whom you have not seen before. They are not merchants. They are not the type of man who comes to this room to do the careful arithmetic of sea risk. They have the look of men who work with information directly, who carry it and sort it and distribute it, and they have been at that table for 2 hours with a stack of handwritten papers between them that none of them have offered to any other customer. One of them looked up when you brought the cups. He looked at you with the assessing look, the look that is calculating something about you without sharing what the calculation is. You put the cups down. You walked away. The look did not follow you to the bar. You know this because you know how it feels when eyes stay on you across a room. They did not stay. You were not interesting enough to keep watching. This is the advantage. The room runs at its highest pitch through the morning. Voices layered over voices, the scrape of benches, the clatter of cups, the sound of paper being unfolded and refolded and passed across tables. Outside, the street is louder than usual. Through the window you can see people stopped on the pavement talking, and once, around 9 o'clock, a small crowd has gathered at the corner where Tower Street meets Lower Thames Street, perhaps 8 or 10 people, and they are all looking at something you cannot see from inside. You think about going to the door to look. You do not go to the door. You fill the vat. You carry the cups. Around 10 in the morning, the room changes in a way that you notice with your body before you notice with your mind. The quality of the sound changes. The voices, which have been urgent and loud and layered since before 6 this morning, begin to drop. Not go quiet. Drop. Become more careful. This happens in the span of perhaps 5 minutes, and when you look up from the tray you are carrying, you see why. A man has come in whom you know by sight. You do not know his name, but you know his face because he has come into this room perhaps 4 times in the last year, and each time he comes the room adjusts to him in the way water adjusts to a stone. He is perhaps 50, gray at the temples, with the bearing of a man who has spent time in rooms more formal than this one. He is well dressed, but not ostentatiously. The clothes of a man who wants to be taken seriously rather than admired. He comes in and scans the room. He goes to a table in the middle where 2 men he apparently knows are sitting. He sits down. He leans forward immediately and begins speaking. Every table within earshot adjusts itself by some incremental degree toward the center of the room. Nobody is obvious about this. The benches do not scrape. No one turns their head. But the posture of the room shifts, the way plants shift toward light without appearing to move. You bring a cup to the table. The man stops speaking for exactly as long as it takes you to put the cup down. You hear 4 words as you walk away. Devon, army, desertion, and a name. Churchill. You carry the word Churchill back to the bar and put it next to Torbay and 463 and the 5th of November. And you add it to the pattern that is building in the part of your mind where you keep things. You know the name Churchill the way any boy in England knows it. John Churchill is one of the most senior military commanders in King James's army. You know this because it has come up at these tables before. In October, in the context of who would fight for the king if fighting became necessary. The word desertion sits next to the name Churchill and means something specific. It means the king's own commander may not fight for the king. It means the army is moving toward William. It means the ground beneath the throne is not as solid as the men sitting on it believe. You refill the vat. Your arms ache. You do not stop. By noon, the room is still full, and the afternoon customers are arriving before the morning ones have left, which creates a pressure and a heat and a noise that fills every cubic inch of the space from the flagstone floor to the low-beamed ceiling. You move through all of it. Cup to table, table to basin, basin to shelf, shelf to vat, vat to cup. In the late afternoon, around 4 o'clock, the crowd begins to thin for the first time all day. Not because the day has resolved into something settled, the opposite. The men leaving are not leaving because they have finished their business. They are leaving because they have gathered what they came for and now need to act on it. You can see this in the way they leave. Quickly, coats pulled on in motion. No pause at the door to exchange final pleasantries. Men leaving a room they needed to be in and now need to leave just as urgently. By 5, it is quiet enough that you can hear the fire. By 6, the last customers have gone, and the room holds only the echo of what it has been all day, the residue of 30 men speaking urgently for 10 hours, the flattened tobacco in the used pipes on the table, the cups that need washing, the news sheets worn soft from so many hands. You sweep the floor. You bank the fire. You wash the cups in the basin. You count the candle stubs to know how many to replace. Mr. Lloyd comes out from behind the bar and stands in the middle of the room for a moment, looking at nothing or looking at something only he can see. After a while, he says, "There will be more news tomorrow." You say, "Yes, sir." He says, "There is always more news when something has started." You carry the last tray to the bar. You blow out the candles. The room goes back to its nighttime self. The same 8 tables and 16 benches and the shelf of pipes and the fire going down to coals. The same room it was this morning before anyone came. But not the same room it was yesterday. You go to your pallet. You lie down. The city outside is different tonight, louder in some directions and stranger in others, and somewhere to the west, in a direction you cannot place from here. There is a smell of smoke that is not the ordinary smoke of hearths and industry. Someone is burning something, or celebrating something. Outside, London is adjusting itself to a new fact. A fleet has landed. A prince is on English soil. An army that was supposed to stop him may not. You wait for sleep. Sleep comes slower tonight. But it comes. There is a thing that happens in a room when many people have been afraid in it for a long time. The fear does not leave when the people leave. It lives in the wood of the tables and the cloth of the benches and the walls that have absorbed 10 hours of lowered voices. You feel it when you sweep, the particular quality of the silence that follows an urgent day, thick in a way that ordinary silence is not. You sit on a bench for a moment, something you do not usually do, and you put your hands flat on the table and feel the wood under your palms. This table has been here since before you arrived. Men have sat at it every day for 2 years, merchants and captains and lawyers and men with leather satchels they will not explain, and they have brought their information and their fear and their calculations to this surface and left something of it behind. You do not know how to say this in a way that sounds true, but you feel it. You stand up. You keep sweeping. London does not panic easily. It absorbs information, adjusts, continues. The docks still loaded cargo on the 4th of November. The bakers still baked on the morning of the 5th. The coal delivery came at the appointed time, regardless of what any fleet was doing on any beach in Devon. The city is larger than any single thing that happens in it. But the city is also paying attention, and you can feel that too. The particular attentiveness of a place that knows something significant is happening inside it, even if it cannot see the shape of the whole. You are paying attention too. You bank the fire. You do this carefully, as always, pulling the ash forward over the coals with the long-handled tool, covering them evenly so the heat is preserved without the risk of a loose ember reaching the floor. A correctly banked fire can hold viable coals for 6 to 8 hours. You will need them alive in the morning. You are beginning to understand, in a way you could not have understood in March when you arrived from Cheam with your 1 coat and your 4 shillings a month, that history does not arrive all at once. It arrives in pieces. Some of the pieces are large and visible, like a fleet of 463 ships making landfall on a beach in Devon. Some of the pieces are small and invisible, like the pause in a conversation when a boy approaches a table. Both kinds are real. Both kinds matter. You blow out the candles one by one until the room is lit only by the low red glow of the banked fire, which throws almost no light but throws enough to see the outlines of things. The tables, the benches, the shelf with its row of clay pipes. You stand there. You are 14 years old, and you have seen more today than most people your age will see in a year. And you have not understood all of it, and you do not need to understand all of it. You carry it. That is what you do. You carry what you have seen and heard, and you do not put it down, and one day, maybe not soon, maybe not even in your own life, the things you carried will matter to someone. Or maybe they will not. Maybe you will grow old and tell no one. You go to your room. You lie down in the dark. The smoke from the west is still there, faint now, the kind of smell you catch in the back of your throat rather than in your nose directly. Bonfires. Someone is burning the 5th of November the way England always burns the 5th of November. Except this year, the 5th of November has given them something new to burn for. The city around you settles towards sleep, one sound at a time. The watch. The last cart. And underneath all of it, steady as a heartbeat, the particular silence of a room where something has begun. The days after the 5th change the room by subtraction. This is the first thing you notice, and you notice it gradually, the way you notice the light changing in autumn, not in a single moment, but in the accumulated difference between one morning and the next. Certain men stop coming, not all at once, one by one, with no announcement. Their chairs simply remain empty at the hours when they were usually filled. You know the regular customers the way you know the tables, by position and habit. You know where each man sits, what he orders, how long he stays, whether he comes alone or with someone. You know the ones who always want a second cup without being asked, and the ones who will wait all morning without signaling, and the ones who fold the news sheet in a particular way when they are done with it. You begin to keep a different kind of account. Not on paper, in your head each morning. Who is here? Who was here yesterday? Who has not been here since the 5th? By the 10th of November, 3 of the men you considered regular are no longer regular. By the 15th, there are 5. By the 20th, there are 8. You have not been told what this means. You do not need to be told. You have spent enough mornings in this room listening to the conversations of merchants and ship owners and underwriters to understand, in the practical terms of a boy who tracks patterns for survival, that the men who are gone are the men who had something to lose if William of Orange takes this throne. They are the men who insured Catholic ships and held Catholic contracts and carried favor with a Catholic court. They are not coming back until they know which way this falls. The men who are still coming are calculating something different. You carry their cups. The middle of November brings cold in the serious way, not the brisk cold of October that is almost welcome after the summer's closeness, but the cold that sets into the bones of the city and stays. The Thames begins to run gray-green with the first edge of winter, and the fog comes in earlier each afternoon and lies along Tower Street until nearly mid-morning. You bring the coal in before dawn now. 2 full buckets because the room is colder when the customers first arrive and you need the fire higher to make the space habitable before 6. Your arms have grown stronger over the months. You do not notice this until one morning you realize that 2 full buckets no longer make you feel the way they did in April. The breathless burning in the forearms, the need to set them down and wait before picking them up again. They still have weight, but they are manageable now in a way they were not. This is what work does. You carry 2 full buckets. You start the fire. The room comes up. Around the 15th of November, the Dutchman comes back. He has not been here since the first week of the month, and his absence has been one of the 5 empty chairs in your daily accounting. He comes in on a Thursday, which is his usual day, at his usual time, and sits at the corner table, which is his usual table. He puts his usual order for 1 cup. You bring it. He wraps his hands around it. He is not reading today. He is watching the room. Not in the obvious way, not turning his head or craning toward conversations. He is watching the room the way you watch the room, from the center of apparent stillness through the edges of the vision, while everything about his posture says that he is occupied elsewhere. You recognize this. You recognize it because it is what you do. You find, for the first time, a strange kinship with this man you do not know and will never speak to directly. He is perhaps 30, Dutch in his accent, careful in his manner. He works for someone. You have understood this for weeks without being told. He comes here to listen and watch and go away again. He does this in a room full of men who are doing versions of the same thing, and none of them acknowledge each other's true purpose. And the whole room operates on this shared pretense that everyone is simply here for the coffee and the news sheets. Nobody is here for the coffee. The coffee is the reason the room exists. But nobody is here for the coffee. You refill his cup without being asked because you have learned that this man will not signal for a second cup, and you have learned to bring it at the moment when the first has been drunk to the halfway point. He does not thank you. He does not look at you. The cup is there, and then it is full again, and he continues watching the room with his hands around it. This is the arrangement. It suits both of you. The room is different in the third week of November from the room that burned through the fifth. The urgency of those early days has settled into something more sustained, more considered. The men who are here now are not men in the grip of surprise. They have absorbed the fact of William's landing, the news of the army's slow dissolution, the accounts filtering up from the south of counties and towns receiving William's forces without resistance. They have moved from shock into the arithmetic of aftermath, which is the arithmetic they know best. Risk and return, cost and advantage, what to do next. You hear numbers you recognize. On the 19th of November, a man at the table near the window puts a folded paper flat on the table and says to the man across from him, without preamble, 7 more. The man across from him nods. 7 more officers have left the king's army. You know this because 3 days earlier you heard the same conversation at a different table with a different number, and the conversation had the same structure, a number, a nod, the silence of men absorbing information they already expected. Churchill is already gone. You know the name by now, the way everyone in this room knows it, John Churchill, who commanded an important part of James's forces, who went to William's side on the 23rd of November. When this news came to the room, it came quietly. A man put a newsletter on his table, and another man leaned over to read it, and neither of them said anything for a long moment. Then one of them said, "That settles the army." The other one said, "Most of it." They picked up their cups. This is how the army of the King of England dissolves. Not with a battle. Not with smoke and blood and the sounds you imagine war to make. With a number and a nod, and 2 men picking up their cups. You carry your tray back to the bar. You think about Churchill and his decision and the weight of it, the decision to leave a king you have served and cross to the man coming to replace him, to wake up on one morning as the soldier of one monarch and go to sleep that night as the soldier of another. You think about what that costs a man. You do not know. You are 14, but you think about it. On the 23rd of November, James retreats to London. The news arrives from several directions, assembling into a picture over the course of an hour. A man comes in at 8 o'clock and speaks to the group already at the table nearest the bar, and there is a shift in the room's posture, the subtle leaning in you have learned to read. By 9 o'clock, there are 4 separate conversations happening about the same event, and by 10 the word London is in the air from every table, meaning James is back, meaning the march south has ended, meaning William has not needed to fight his way to the capital, because the capital's king has simply turned around and come home. You are at the window table with a tray when you hear the details assembled for the first time in a single sentence by a man speaking to no one in particular, reading aloud from a handwritten newsletter with a flat voice that does not give anything away. His Majesty has withdrawn from Salisbury and returned toward London, following the defection of several senior officers. That is all. That is everything. Withdrawn. The word sounds like something folded, pulled back into itself, a flag coming down. You put the last cup on the table. You pick up the empty tray. You go back to the bar. Mr. Lloyd is polishing a cup at the bar with the cloth he uses for this purpose, a slow circular motion, and he does not look up when you approach. But after a moment he says, still polishing, "How is the coal?" You say, "2 buckets remaining. I will need more by Thursday." He says, "Order it for Wednesday." You say, "Yes, sir." He keeps polishing. The cup is already clean. He keeps polishing it anyway. You understand that he is not polishing the cup. He is doing with his hands what you do with your hands when the room is overwhelming and you need something steady to hold on to. The physical work of a body that knows its job and can do it regardless of what the mind is turning over. He polishes the cup. You go for more coal. In the last week of November, the room reaches a new equilibrium, different from the frenzy of early November, and different from the quiet tension of October. It is the equilibrium of a room in which most of the people present have made their calculations and are now waiting for events to confirm them. The urgency has flattened into expectation. Men still lean across tables. Voices still drop when you approach. The news sheets still travel from hand to hand. But there is less of the quality you noticed in those first weeks, the quality of a string pulled too tight. The string has settled to a different pitch. Lower, more certain. Something has been decided. Not in a single room, not at a single table, but across the city, at hundreds of tables in hundreds of coffeehouses, in the offices of lawyers and the counting houses of merchants and the parlors of men who own things and must now decide which future will protect those things. The decision is William. Not everyone, not yet openly. There are still men at these tables who sit with the careful neutrality of people waiting to see which way a tree falls before stepping away from it. But the balance of the room has shifted. You feel it in the mornings before you can put words to it, in who arrives first, in where they sit, in the register of their voices when they speak to each other. The men who favored William are sitting slightly straighter. The men who favored James are sitting more carefully, watching their words, folding their opinions back inside their coats when they button up to leave. The room reflects the city. The city reflects the country. And the country is turning toward a new king. You sweep the floor in the late afternoon. The long, slow strokes you have learned to make that gather the day's accumulation of ash and tobacco and mud without raising a cloud of it. The room is half empty now, the last of the morning customers gone and the next ones not yet arrived. You sweep around the empty tables. On the table nearest the bar, which is the table where the newsletters always land first, there is a single sheet of paper that someone left behind. You pick it up to move it. You see the words at the top. You stand there. This is not a newsletter. It is a letter, handwritten, addressed to no one, or perhaps left by accident, or perhaps left on purpose in a room where someone expected it to be found. You cannot tell. The handwriting is careful and small, and you can read it. You can read it word for word, and what it says is a list of names, and beside each name a decision. William or James, stay or go, here or France. You stand there with the letter in your hand. You are in the middle of the room. Anyone coming in from the street could see you. You put the letter back on the table, exactly as you found it, exactly aligned with the edge of the table that you can use as a reference point. You step away. You keep sweeping. 3 minutes later, a man comes in who you do not know, goes directly to that table, picks up the letter without sitting down, folds it, puts it in his coat, and leaves. He was in the room for less than 1 minute. You do not look at him directly. You keep sweeping. The broom makes its sound against the flagstone, stroke after stroke, and the dust moves ahead of it in a slow gray cloud toward the door. In the evenings now, after the room is swept and the fire is banked and the cups are washed and the door is bolted, you have a habit you did not have in the summer. You sit at the table nearest the kitchen door, the one no customer ever chooses because it is too close to the smell of the coal bin, and you sit there with your hands flat on the wood and you run through the day in your mind. Not the day in general. The specific things. The man who held the newsletter without reading it. The Dutchman's expression when he left. Not at his usual time, but half an hour early, putting his coat on quickly and not finishing his second cup. The woman who came to the door at 10:30 and asked for a man by name and was told by Mr. Lloyd that no such man was there today, and the way she received this information without visible surprise, as though the absence was itself an answer. You hold these things. You do not know what to do with them except hold them. Mr. Lloyd would not want you to write them down. You understand this without being told. The knowledge that lives in this room is the kind that cannot be put on paper, or rather the kind that is dangerous on paper, that changes character when it is given a fixed form. It is safer in the head of a boy. Safer in the head of a boy who knows how to keep his eyes on the floor. On the 27th of November, 2 things happen that you remember afterward, because they happen on the same day and you do not understand until later that they are connected. The first is that a man comes into the coffeehouse at mid-morning and speaks with Mr. Lloyd behind the bar for perhaps 5 minutes, in the low voice of a man delivering information rather than having a conversation, and then leaves without ordering anything. Mr. Lloyd, after he goes, puts something in the left drawer under the bar and closes it. You have never seen anything go into that drawer. The second is that Mr. Lloyd, at the end of the day, tells you that he may need you to carry a message in the next several days. You say, "To where, sir?" He says, "Not far." You say, "When?" He says, "When I tell you." You say, "Yes, sir." He says nothing more. You finish sweeping. You bank the fire. You wash the cups. You go to your room. You lie down and look at the ceiling, which is low and uneven and has a stain near the left corner that you have studied on many nights and that looks, in certain lights, like a map of a coastline you have never seen. You think about carrying a message. You think about the drawer under the bar. You think about what it means to be trusted with a small task by a man who does not explain his reasons. You have been working here for 8 months. This is the first time Mr. Lloyd has asked you to do something other than carry cups and coal and orders from one side of a room to the other. December is 4 days away. Everything that has been building since the summer, the letters and the pamphlets and the fleet and the defections, is coming to a point that you can feel even if you cannot see. You breathe. The ceiling is low and uneven. The stain in the corner looks like a coastline. The fire in the kitchen has banked itself down to coals, and the room is warm enough, and the blanket is heavy. Your eyes are heavy. The day has been long. But some days, you think, in the moment before sleep comes, some days are longer on the inside than they are in hours. Today was one of those. The sounds of the city fall back into their low evening register. The watch. The last cart of the day going north. You are asleep before it reaches the corner. December comes in without announcement. One morning it is still November, and the next morning it is the 1st of December, and nothing is different except the date, and yet the date feels different in the way that crossing a threshold feels different even when the room on the other side looks exactly like the room you left. You carry the coal in. You start the fire. You roast the beans. The vat goes on. This is what December looks like from the inside of a coffee house at 4 in the morning. The same as November, the same as October, the same sequence of small necessary tasks that keep a room functional and warm. But the customers who will walk through the door in 2 hours are not the same customers they were 2 months ago, and the room they will fill is not the same room it was. And the city outside has a quality now that you notice at night more than in the day, a kind of alertness in its darkness, an awareness. You noticed it first 3 nights ago. You had gone to the back door to bring in the last of the evening coal, and you stood for a moment in the doorway, looking up at the sky over the rooflines of Tower Street. And the sky to the west was not quite dark. Not lit exactly, not fire, but something between darkness and light that had no name you knew, a faint suffused glow as though the city in that direction was not fully asleep. You stood and looked at it for a long time. Then you went inside. You did not ask anyone about it. The next morning, before the customers arrived, you heard Mr. Lloyd tell the delivery boy who brought the newsletters that there had been incidents near Smithfield, not fighting, crowd action, doors broken, property taken, the kind of event that builds and disperses and leaves no clear account of itself in the morning. The delivery boy nodded as though this was not surprising. It was not surprising. You had seen the glow. London in early December 1688 is a city absorbing too much too fast. William's forces are advancing from the west, and James has retreated to London, and the city's Protestant majority, which is most of the city, is not hiding its sympathies in the way it hid them in October. The pamphlets that were cautious in September are bold now. The conversations at these tables that were in whispers in October are at normal volume in December. And in the streets, at night, there are crowds. You do not go into the streets at night. Mr. Lloyd has not told you not to. You have decided this yourself. The 3rd of December arrives with news that comes to the coffee house before it comes anywhere official, which is the nature of this room and all rooms like it across the city. The news is this: James has sent out peace commissioners to negotiate with William. He has agreed to call a free parliament. He is, in the careful language of the newsletter that arrives at 8 in the morning, seeking terms. The man who reads this aloud at the table near the window reads it in a flat voice and puts the newsletter down and picks up his cup. The man across from him says, "Terms." He says the word once, and then he too picks up his cup and they drink together in the silence of two men who have just heard something that means more than it says. Terms means the king has stopped pretending he can stop what is happening. Terms means the arithmetic is finished. You carry the empty cups away. On the 4th of December, the message comes. You are sweeping the floor between the morning and afternoon customers when Mr. Lloyd comes out from behind the bar with a folded piece of paper sealed with plain wax, and he stands in front of you and waits until you have stopped sweeping and are looking at him. He says, "You know where the sign of the ship is, Eastcheap." You say, "Yes, sir. You have passed it on your way to the market." He holds out the paper. He says to the man behind the bar, not to anyone else. You say nothing about where it came from and nothing about where you are going. You come directly back. You take the paper. It is small, folded twice, sealed with a plain circle of brown wax that has no crest or mark in it. You can feel nothing through the paper by pressure. It weighs almost nothing. You put your coat on. You go out into Tower Street. The cold hits you immediately. The December cold that is not cruel in the way February cold is cruel but is persistent, settled, committed to making the city gray. You pull your coat close and walk east along Tower Street toward Eastcheap with the paper in your coat pocket and your hand over it, not holding it, just aware of it. The streets are busier than usual for mid-morning. There are groups of 2 and 3 men standing at the corners of streets, which is not unusual, but there is a quality to the standing that is unusual, a deliberateness, a shared orientation of attention that makes these groups feel less like men waiting for someone and more like men watching for something. You keep walking. You do not look at them. The sign of the ship is an ordinary tavern, low-ceilinged and close, with the smell of spilled ale and tobacco, and the river that finds its way into every establishment within half a mile of the Thames. You go in and find the bar and the man behind it, who is perhaps 45 and has the expression of a man who has been expecting someone without knowing who it would be. You say, "I have something for you." He looks at you for a moment with an assessing look. He says, "From where?" You say, "Tower Street." He holds out his hand. You put the paper in it. He puts it in his apron without looking at it. He says, "Wait." He goes into the back. You stand at the bar. The tavern has 3 men in it at this hour, none of them looking at you. A candle burning on the bar. The smell of the morning's bread already gone. The man comes back with another folded piece of paper, sealed the same way, plain wax, no mark. He says nothing. He hands it to you. You put it in your coat pocket, and you go back out into Eastcheap and walk west along Tower Street toward Lloyd's. You do not look at the paper. You do not think about what is in it. You walk at the pace you always walk, not slow, not fast, the pace of a boy on an errand who has somewhere to be and no particular reason to hurry. You arrive back at Lloyd's. You give the paper to Mr. Lloyd. He puts it in the drawer under the bar without opening it in front of you. He says, "Good." He says this the way he says nothing wrong, as an evaluation rather than praise. You go back to your sweeping. You will not carry another message for 3 days, and then you will carry one more, and then it will stop, and you will not be asked again, and you will never know what the papers said, or who arranged them, or what they changed. But on this day, walking back along Tower Street with a sealed paper in your coat pocket, in a city that is watching itself change, you feel something that you cannot name at 14, but will understand later when you have more words for things. You are part of it. Not the main part. Not a part that anyone will write down, but a part. There is something you have been noticing about the room that you cannot find words for until the second week of December, and then the words arrive fully formed one morning while you are grinding the coffee beans and the sound of the mill fills the kitchen. The room is louder when it is afraid, and quieter when it has decided. In October, the room was quiet in the way of fear, the low-voiced, careful quiet of men who had not yet decided what to do and could not afford to be overheard making the wrong choice. In the first days of November, after the landing, the room was loud in the way of shock, voices up, the noise of men trying to absorb something large through the instrument of speech. And now, in December, the room has gone quiet again, but it is a different quiet, not the quiet of men who have not decided, the quiet of men who have. You think about this while you grind. The mill turns. The grounds fall into the drawer. A decision made by enough men at enough tables in enough rooms across a city becomes a fact that no longer requires discussion. The room is quiet because England has decided. Not officially, not yet. The official part is still to come. The documents and the ceremonies and the formal transfer of power that will happen in the new year. But the deciding is done. You can feel it in the room, the way you feel the change in the fire when the coal has caught and the heat is self-sustaining and you no longer need to tend it. The fire is going. You tip the grounds into the vat. You put the water on. The morning begins. On the 9th of December, a man you have not seen since the beginning of November comes back. He is the physician, the one who reads the newsletter front to back every Tuesday and orders a second cup and pays with exact coin. He left on the 5th of November, an hour early, without his second cup. He is here now. He sits at his usual table. He orders his coffee and reads his newsletter, and when you bring the second cup without being asked, for the first time he looks up at you directly, not with the assessing look, with a look you cannot categorize, something between acknowledgement and something else that has no simple name. He says, "Thank you." You say, "Sir." You go back to the bar. He drinks the second cup. He pays with exact coin. He leaves at his usual time. On the 11th of December, James tries to leave England. The news arrives at the Coffeehouse the next morning, in several pieces that do not all agree with each other, which is the nature of news in the immediate aftermath of something that has just happened. What all the pieces agree on is this: James took the Great Seal of England, the official seal used to authenticate government documents, and threw it into the Thames. You hear this at two separate tables, from two separate men who arrived separately and had not spoken to each other. The Great Seal in the Thames. You think about this while you fill the vat. The Great Seal is a heavy disc of silver engraved with the image of the king, used to stamp official documents with the authority of the crown. Every act of parliament, every treaty, every royal proclamation, it weighs several pounds. It has existed in some form since William the Conqueror. James threw it into the river. It means he was leaving. It means he did not want to leave anything behind that could be used by whoever came after. It means he was not coming back. He was wrong about the leaving, as it turned out. Fishermen found him at Faversham in Kent, trying to take a boat to France. They brought him back. The king was caught by fishermen. You think about how the powerful and the ordinary have a way of meeting at unexpected intersections. Fishermen, a beach, a king trying to pass as a private man. The sea unwilling to cooperate. The room processes this information thoroughly, carefully, without visible excitement. What is left of surprise has been used up over the last 6 weeks. The room is running on anticipation. On the 15th of December, Mr. Lloyd has you carry a second message. This time to a different address, farther north, near Cheapside, a counting house with 2 clerks visible through the window and a third man in the back, who takes the paper from you with the same plain efficiency as the man at the sign of the ship. You come back the way you went. You pass through streets that carry the particular energy of a city in the last stages of waiting. Mr. Lloyd takes the return paper. He puts it in the drawer. He does not say good this time, and you understand this not as a withdrawal of approval, but as an indication that things have moved past the point where such evaluations matter. Events are moving faster than the language used to describe them. You go back to your work. On the 17th of December, the room is almost entirely strangers. You refill the vat 4 times before noon. You carry more cups than you have ever carried in a single day, moving through a room so dense with men and smoke and voice that you navigate by feel as much as sight. The tray held level in both hands, your path through the benches memorized over 8 months until it is in your body rather than your mind. Your arms do not ache. This is the day you realize that you are not the same boy who arrived in March with the smell of Surrey in his coat. You carry cups. You carry them through a room full of men who are deciding the future of England. None of them know your name. All of them drink the coffee you bring. The day ends as all days end. The last customers leave, the bolt goes across, you sweep, you bank, you wash. Mr. Lloyd comes out from behind the bar. He says, "Tomorrow will be different." You say, "Sir." He says, "Be here at 4." You are already always here at 4. He knows this. He says it anyway. You go to your room. You lie on your pallet. Outside, London is not sleeping. The sounds from the west are different tonight. Not the fog-muffled ordinary sounds of the city keeping its own time, but something more alive, the sound of a city holding itself awake to see what comes next. You hold yourself awake for a while, listening. Then the sounds settle. The city breathes. You breathe. You close your eyes. You let the dark come. The river is there. always there, steady beneath the sounds. You breathe once more and you follow it down. The 18th of December begins like the others. 4 in the morning. Coal. Fire. Beans. The mill. The vat. You have done this sequence so many times now that your hands know it without consultation, moving from one task to the next with the particular efficiency of motion learned through repetition until it lives below thinking. Your hands know this kitchen. Your hands know the weight of the bucket and the resistance of the mill handle and the exact sound the vat makes when the water is at the right heat. A sound between a hiss and a low mutter that means it is ready. You tip the grounds in. You wait. Outside, the city is making different sounds than usual. Not alarming sounds, not the sounds of the incidents you heard about near Smithfield 2 weeks ago. These are larger sounds, more organized. The sound of something being anticipated. There are more people on the street before dawn than there should be. You can hear them through the door and the window, the movement of feet in numbers, and underneath it something else, a low communal noise that is not quite speech and not quite anything else. You think you know what this is. You have been expecting it. You open the front door. The cold comes in. Tower Street is beginning to fill even in the dark. People moving westward with a purpose and a direction that tells you everything. You stand in the doorway for a moment in your coat, watching the early shapes of people moving through the lamplit street, and the direction they are all moving, west, tells you that what Mr. Lloyd said yesterday was true. Today will be different. You go back inside. You get the tray. You open the door at 5:30, half an hour early, because you already know what is coming and you want the vat to be ready. There are men waiting. There are always men waiting now, but this morning there are more of them. And they come in with something in their faces that you have not seen in the same form before in this room. The tension that has lived here since October, the careful held quality of men navigating something dangerous and unresolved, is gone. Not replaced by relaxation exactly, replaced by something more active, more forward-looking. The face of men moving toward something rather than away from it. The room fills in 20 minutes. It fills in the way a room fills before something important is announced. The awareness of shared occasion making everyone sit slightly straighter and speak slightly more openly. You carry cups. You refill the vat. You carry cups. By 8 in the morning, the first accounts are arriving from the western roads, brought by men who have come in from that direction on horseback and on foot, men whose boots carry the mud of the road rather than the mud of the city. They come in. They sit down. They talk. The room listens. What they describe is this. The Prince of Orange and his forces are moving toward London from the west, along the road from Windsor. The advance has been organized. The streets along the route have people standing on them already. The Dutch guards in their orange sashes are in columns, orderly and unhurried, moving through a country that has chosen not to oppose them. The room receives this information with the quiet of men whose prediction has been confirmed. One of the men at the table by the window says, in a voice that is the first fully unguarded voice you have heard in this room in weeks, He will be at the gates by noon. Nobody disagrees. You carry the tray back. You refill the cups. At 11 in the morning, you find an excuse to go to the window. You have not done this before, found an excuse to look out the window because it has not felt like your place. Your place is at the bar and the vat and the tables and between them. But the room is so full that an additional body near the window is not conspicuous, and you are carrying a cup to the table nearest it anyway. And when you put the cup down, you turn and look through the glass into Tower Street. The street is packed. Not the ordinary business of the day density that you have come to know over 8 months, where the movement is mixed and purposeful in all directions. This is a crowd with a direction. Everyone is facing west. There is no way to see from here what they are looking at, because there are too many people and the buildings block the view, but you can read the crowd the way you have learned to read the room, by posture, by orientation, by the quality of attention. They are watching. The drum beat, that is the sound that comes through the glass first. A military drum, the low regular beat of a column moving at pace, then gradually resolving through the other sounds, the sound of hooves on cobblestone, many hooves, organized. The crowd on Tower Street does not roar. This is the thing you will remember about this day for the rest of your life. The crowd does not roar the way a crowd in a story roars. It makes a sound that is more like a collective exhale, a long-held breath released, a sound that is relief and approval, and the complicated emotion of people who have been afraid for a long time and are now less afraid. It is not triumphant exactly. It is something more human than triumph. It is the sound of people deciding something is over. You stand at the window for perhaps 30 seconds. Then you pick up your empty tray and you go back to the bar and you fill the cups and you carry them out again. This is your job. This is what you do. The room behind you is talking. Every table is talking now, openly, without the lowered voices and the pauses and the careful calibration of who might be listening. Men who have been measuring their words for weeks are speaking at full volume, and the room is louder than it has been since the 5th of November, but differently loud, a different register, something closer to ordinary human conversation. You move through it. You fill the cups. You carry them. By the afternoon, the first of William's officers have actually come into the coffeehouse, Dutch and English both, men in travel-worn coats with the road still on them, and they sit at the tables and order coffee like ordinary men and speak at ordinary volume, and the room absorbs them without ceremony, which is the room's great talent. It absorbs everything and continues. One of them, a young officer, perhaps 20 years old, with the beginnings of a beard and the expression of a man who has been on horseback for many days and is very glad to be sitting down, looks up at you when you bring the cup and says, in English with a Dutch shape underneath it, "Thank you." You say, "Sir?" He drinks the coffee. He winces slightly at the bitterness. Then he drinks more of it. You think about this moment afterward, this specific small moment, the young Dutch officer and the coffeehouse boy, in a room that is the future of the London financial world that nobody has built yet, on the day a revolution that cost almost no lives transferred the crown of England from one head to another. The officer and the boy. The coffee between them. December the 18th, 1688. You carry the empty tray back. The day continues. The vat is refilled 4 times. The coal is replenished twice. The candles burn through. By 6 in the evening, the room is finally thinning, the day's excitement metabolizing into the tiredness that follows sustained emotion, and you sweep the floor and bank the fire and wash the cups with the particular feeling of a day that has been so long on the inside that the outside hours cannot account for it. Mr. Lloyd comes out from behind the bar. He does not say anything. He stands in the middle of the room for a moment, looking at something only he can see, or looking at nothing, which may be the same thing. Then he says, "The Great Seal has been found." You look at him. He says, "Fishermen pulled it from the Thames, near Lambeth. Apparently it was given to them without explanation, and they sold it to a man who understood what he had." He pauses. He says, "It will be needed for a new reign." You say nothing. He goes back behind the bar. You finish sweeping. The Great Seal. You think about it lying on the riverbed, the engraved face of a king looking up through the brown water at the underside of a city that was moving away from him. You think about the fishermen who found it, their hands on the silver, not knowing at first what they had. You think about the weight of it, several pounds of official authority, the accumulated authentication of centuries, dragged up into the light by men who had nothing to do with courts or crowns or the business of kingdoms. Things end up in unlikely hands. You put the broom away. You blow out the candles. 5 more days pass in the way that the end of things passes, both slower and faster than you expect, events arriving at the same time as the sense that they are arriving too quickly. On the 23rd of December, James II of England leaves his country for the last time. He is escorted to the coast by Dutch guards. He goes to France. He will not come back, not truly, not in any way that matters to the country he left. He will spend the rest of his life in the French court at Saint-Germain-en-Laye, a king in name only, sustained by French charity and his own conviction that the throne still belongs to him. He is wrong about this, but he does not know it yet. The news comes to the coffeehouse the way all the news has come, in fragments, reaching different tables at different hours, assembling slowly into a fact. The word that travels fastest is simply gone. He is gone. By 10 o'clock, everyone in the room has heard it, and the room has gone very quiet. Not the quiet of fear, not the quiet of decision, the quiet of completion. You have been in this room through all the other kinds of quiet, and this one is different from all of them. It is the quiet of something finished, the particular silence that follows the last note of a piece of music, when the sound is still present in some sense, still vibrating in the material of the room, but the music itself is over. You stand at the bar. You look at the room. The men at the tables are reading or speaking in low voices, or simply sitting with their cups and their thoughts. Nobody is celebrating. Nobody is visibly grieving. The room contains both. You can feel it. The complex mixture of emotion that belongs to a moment when something you feared and something you hoped for have both become true at the same time. A king has gone. The country is changed. It did not look like what you expected change to look like. It looked like this room. It looked like men at tables, speaking carefully, passing papers, drinking bitter coffee from cups carried by a boy who was never introduced to anyone and never mentioned in any account. There is a man at the table by the south wall, the one with the shim of folded leather under the short leg, who has been here since before 8 in the morning. He has been here all day, longer than any other customer. You have refilled his cup 3 times. He is not reading, and he is not writing, and he is not speaking with anyone. He is simply sitting. He is perhaps 60. You have seen him perhaps 4 times in the last 2 months, always alone, always at this table, always with the expression of a man doing something difficult with his thoughts that he would rather not be doing. Late in the afternoon, around 3 o'clock, he puts his cup down and sits for a moment with his hands flat on the table, looking at them. Then he picks up his coat from the bench beside him. He puts it on slowly. He buttons it. He reaches into his coat and puts coins on the table. He stands. He looks around the room once. It is not the look of a man checking whether he has left something behind. It is the look of a man taking something in, fixing something in memory. Then he walks to the door and goes out. You clear his table. The coins are correct for 3 cups of coffee and not a penny more or less. You carry them to the bar. You think about what a man looks like when he is saying goodbye to a version of the world that is ending quietly at a corner table in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. You do not know what he believed or what he loses now or what he will do tomorrow. You will never know. He is one of the thousands of people who passed through this room and left nothing behind except a few coins and a faint impression on the air. Like you. Except that you are still here. You think about something Mr. Lloyd said in October, standing in the dark after the last customers had gone. He said, "There are things spoken in this room that are spoken here and nowhere else." You have thought about this sentence many times. In October, you understood it as a warning. Do not repeat what you hear. Keep the room's secrets in the room. Now, 2 months later, you understand something else in it. He was also telling you something about the room itself. There are conversations that cannot happen in the open, in the street, in front of witnesses who have allegiances and interests and the power to act on what they hear. There are ideas and plans and decisions that need a room with a fire and cups of something hot. A room where men can sit and be ordinary men while they say extraordinary things. A room that is not quite public and not quite private. A room that is its own kind of jurisdiction. This room, this vat, these cups, the things spoken here have shaped what happened in the last 2 months, not alone, not more than the fleet and the army and the king's own failures, but the conversations that happened at these tables were part of the mechanism, one gear among many, turning. And you were in the room. You carried the cups. You were part of the mechanism too, in your small, particular way. This is not nothing. This is not everything. It is what it is. The room thins toward evening. One by one, the men button their coats and leave. going out into a December that is the same December it was in the morning, but is also now December of a country with a different future than the one it woke up with 3 months ago. The last man out closes the door. You bolt it. You stand in the empty room. 8 tables, 16 benches, the shelf of clay pipes, the bar, the vat empty now, cold, waiting for tomorrow. You sweep. You have swept this floor perhaps 200 times. You know every stone of it, every uneven edge, every corner where the dust gathers, regardless of how thoroughly you move it out. Your hands know the broom, your back knows the angle. 200 mornings of this, and 200 evenings, and somewhere in all that repetition you have also been standing at the edge of one of the most significant months in the history of this country. You did not know, when you came from Surrey in March, that this would happen. You came for 4 shillings a month. You came because there was no other option, and London was where options existed, or so your mother believed, and she was not wrong about that. You got more than 4 shillings. You got this. You bank the fire. You wash the cups. You put the pipes on the shelf. You blow out the candles one by one until the room is lit only by the coals, the same low red glow that it ends every evening in, the same room it always is in the dark. You stand in it. You are 14 years old. You have not written anything down. You have not told anyone anything. You have carried cups from the bar to the tables, and from the tables to the basin, and from the basin to the shelf, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 9 months now, though when you came to this city in March, it was only 8 months. And in those months, at those tables, in this room, on this street, England changed. Not because of you. Not without you, either. Both things are true. Both things will always be true. You go to your room. You lie on your pallet. The blanket is heavy. The fire in the kitchen is banked down, and the warmth of it comes through the wall, and you can feel it against your back, steady and low. The warmth of a fire that will be alive in the morning when you need it. Outside, London is quiet tonight. Quieter than it has been in weeks. The watch calls the hour somewhere to the north. The river is there, always there, the low, steady note beneath everything. You breathe. The room is dark. The city breathes. You breathe with it. In, out. The watch again, farther away. The river. Your eyes are heavy. The blanket is warm. The fire is going behind the wall. Tomorrow you will be here at 4. The coal will need bringing in. The fire will need starting. The beans will need roasting. The vat will need filling. The cups will need carrying. The room will need you. And you will be there, as you have always been there, as you will continue to be, in the dark, with the tray, at the edge of whatever comes next. You breathe. Slower. The city folds itself into the night. The sounds grow softer, one by one, until there is only the river. And then only the dark. And then only your breath. And then nothing at all. Sleep well. Good night. If this kind of story finds you in the right moment, please consider subscribing to Quiet History at Bedtime. A like or a notification bell means more than you might think. This channel exists because of people who stayed until the end. Thank you for being one of them.